Alright, so this isn't really going to show me pulling the tank and putting it back in. I did that last night. I thought of this morning because last night pulling the tank, searched for some videos, and there weren't really very many out there, and what was out there was so-so. Guys were chopping the mufflers off, chopping the exhaust off, that kind of thing. Well, this is going to get new exhaust, but that's not in the plan right now. That's about a month down the road. So I couldn't cut the exhaust off because to get the fuel tank out, yes, you need to remove the mufflers. They need to be out of the way. So, but did this by myself, pulled the tank, put it back in, had about a quarter tank of gas. I drained the gas after I swapped the sending unit, which is why the tank was pulled. I had a bad sending unit. This car sat for about 20 years. I just bought it like 2 weeks ago. Been at it. Runs by itself now. Drives down the road. Now taking care of smaller stuff. Replaced the sending unit so my gas gauge works. That's important, right? Got a used one from a buddy of mine. Tried it out before I pulled the tank. Works great. So I'm just going to show you some helpful tips that wasn't really clear in the videos that I watched. So first thing is you're going to have to, well, it doesn't really matter what you do first. I dropped the exhaust first. This is a 78 silver anniversary, so it's a exhaust is the same, 75 and up. And the pipes, all you have to do, there's 4 bolts at the catalytic converter right there. The mufflers have tabs that slide into the hangers at the back of the car. And then I'm going to show you there's a hanger right behind the converter. Let me get underneath here. You can kind of see this hanger right here. Well, I just pulled one bolt out. I was able to just swing this out of the way, and the pipe drops here. Then you can slide the exhaust towards the out and drop the mufflers down. You pull that whole assembly out, like what I just showed you. So then that's out of the way. Get back up here. And then, of course, you need to pull the spare tire out of the way, because that's underneath. The one video I watched, the guy had an 80, I think it was. And this is the top part of the spare tire holder. And in the 80 he had, it was riveted. Well, in my 78, it's bolted in. So there's bolt here. Then at the very back of the car, you take 2 bolts out, and this whole piece comes right off. The other part will hang down. This hangs down. There was a mouse nest in there, but this hangs down. And to get this off, there are these long hanger bolts. They unscrew. Don't know where I have those at right now. I know I've got them somewhere. Anyways, those bolts screw up in here. Then the other piece screws here. Get that out of the way, and then you're up here. You got your fuel tank. You got your support bracket. The straps connect to the bracket here, and they go around, up, and over the tank. They connect here. And the video I watched, a couple of them, the people took the bracket and the straps completely out. We don't really have to do that. If you take and run the nut on the hanger, you run it all the way down to the very bottom so you have room. You do that on both sides, and then you have 2 bolts on either side that hold this bracket on. you can actually leave the straps attached here, because once you undo this and you run the nut down to the end and then just kind of push them up so the nut's right up against the bracket, you got slack in your strap. So when you pull this down, you can actually just move this out of the way. And when you're taking it apart, it's not too much of a big deal. I mean, you could take this whole thing out, but when you go to put it back in, it's very, very helpful, especially if you're doing it by yourself, to put the end of the strap through, just get the nut started, and leave this hanging, and you can slide the tank up into it and shove the bracket underneath, and you can get the tank up in place. This does not have to come all the way out. And if you want to, you can even, take the straps off the bracket and get the bracket out of the way. But it can be done without taking this and the straps all the way out, because when you put it back in, especially if you're by yourself, trying to handle the tank, the bracket, and the straps and get it all back in is a royal pain in the ass. I've tried doing it that way first, and what I ended up doing is dropping the tank back out, do what I said with the straps here, and let this just hang. Then I just kind of fed the tank up in there, because without the tank in there, this hangs down, and you got enough play with the nut just started on the other end of the strap to get that tank up in there. Then you can shove it up into place, and you can get one nut started on each end. So then you can, you don't have to try and hold the tank anymore. Then you can finish it up. That's what I did. Solid frame, looks kind of shitty, but it's a good frame on this car. Is good and solid. Everything came apart. I had one of these bolts that broke. It was on the driver's side. Everything else on this car came apart, piece of cake. I've done other stuff on it, break stuff up front. Everything has come apart. I even was able to get all the bleeder screws broke loose and out of the calipers, all 6 bleeders. But anyways, that's a totally different thing. So once you have it in, you can just tighten these bolts. You can tighten the straps, and the tank is up in there. Now, the other thing when you're doing this is you have 3 lines. See, I put this all back together not thinking I was going to do this, and I don't want to take it back apart. But pull this out. There's 4 screws. Then you got this rubber in here. Pull that out, and then you can access the wires, and you can access the hoses. Here's the old sending unit right here. There's the original space saver. Don't think it's ever been on the ground. Anyways, let me find a place to set this. This sets in the car just like this. The 2 lines go to the passenger side. The single line goes to driver's side. What you have is, this is your vent line that comes from the vapor canister up front on the driver's side. That's your feed line for the fuel pump, 3/8. That's your return line from the fuel pump, which is 1/4 inch. Your ground wire connects here, then your other lead connects here. My gasket was actually good when I pulled this apart, so I reused my original gasket. These hoses are kind of a pain in the ass to do. You have a metal clip that fits over these. You just take a screwdriver and you can just pop it off and push it back, and then you have pinch clamps. So I was able to do the pinch clamps, take a long flat blade and push the hoses off here. This side, you have a short piece of hose, and then you have the screw-in vent for the tank. And then you have another short piece of hose that connects to the line that goes up to the passenger front. That one's a pain in the ass to get to. I cut that line to get the tank out of the car, which when you have the tank partially drop down, it makes it a lot easier to reach that one. The other two you can easily do. You can get the rubber hoses off without the tank being dropped all the way down. You're going to want to put new rubber lines on there because gas nowadays will eat the shit out of this stuff. And as a matter of fact, the hose for the feed line, it was starting to split. Good idea to use fuel injection grade rubber fuel hose. It will stand up and hold up to today's gas and not deteriorate within 6 months. Reuse the pinch clamps. The original pinch clamps, they were still nice and tight, springy, and since there's not really any pressure in the system, there's no reason to use screw clamps, hose clamps, and not reuse them. If they're weak, you can buy new pinch clamps. It was kind of a pain getting the hoses on. You want to put a little bit of something on the metal part of the lines so the hose slides on better, and then you can pull that metal clip, snap it in place. The other side, the short piece of hose here, you'll put that on before you put the tank in the car, because the vent is screwed into the tank and this is screwed into the tank. There's enough room, you can put a new piece of hose on there. Just don't forget your clamps. The other piece of hose, you'll definitely want to slide that back on while the tank is partly down. I was able to do it with the tank up in place, but it's a really tight fit. If you got someone with tiny hands, it'd be a lot easier for them to get their hand between the tank and the body, up, down in there, and pull that rubber hose on. But I was able to do it, and then with a long, real long handled pair of needle nose pliers, I was able to, with these, I was able to do the pinch clamps and put them in place. This is the piece that bolts at the front of the top piece of the spare tire cover. 2 bolts, this comes off, cover drops down. You take the 2 rear bolts, the top piece will come right out. So this car actually has factory lock for that. It's keyed to the door lock, so that's kind of cool. And then I don't know what I did with the, it's probably somewhere next to the car. Yes, my bench is a mess. I got done last night putting this all back together and went, throw everything on the bench, going inside. I'm done for the day. So other than that, that's all we got. Hopefully that helps. If I would have thought about it, I don't know, I probably wouldn't have done it when I was doing it, because I was by myself, so I needed both hands to drop the tank and put it back in. I drained the gas out of the tank before I put it back in, but there's still probably about a gallon or so left in it. Made it a little bit heavier, but it's in, it's done, it's back together. Before I buttoned all this up and put this back on and buttoned this all back up, I turned the key on, tested, make sure the sender still was working inside the tank. Of course, I had thrown the gas in it and had enough gas for about a quarter tank, because these have like a 24-gallon tank in them, I think, and it showed quarter tank on the gauge, so it was good to button the rest of the way up. Today I'm going to throw the exhaust back up on it and put the car back down on the ground. Probably won't put the spare tire thing in it right now. I'll do that later on. Not really much need for it just yet. And that's it. Move on to other projects. But yeah, 70,000 original mile, 78 silver anniversary Corvette. It is an actual silver anniversary, even though it's been repainted. I did decode the tag, and it is an L48 4-speed car. So actually in overall really good shape, nothing's hacked up. So once my registration for these authentic plates comes back in the mail, it'll be back out on the road. Let me know if this helps. Hopefully it does. Never done this before.